Both the House and the Senate have rescinded California's 3 EPA waivers.
The internal combustion engine is responsible for roughly 40% of platinum demand. It's responsible for over 80% of palladium demand and over 85% of rhodium. The internal combustion engine sales are going to fall. The auto sector becomes a net supplier.
Now, that's an interesting concept.
Recent strong Chinese platinum demand.
Don't discuss that.
China is famous for buying things when they're out of favor.
Gold feel the same way?
I think the top's in.
You do?
Yeah, confirm the anecdotal evidence that we're in a crowded gold market now.
Are you hearing of any new uses for palladium?
There are uses for palladium in conjunction with platinum, the most obvious one of which I know about is...
Welcome to Noble Six Talks. We are here at the 49th Annual IPMI Conference in Scottsdale, Arizona. And our guest today is Rhona O'Connell of StoneX. Rhona is the head of market analysis, which includes Europe, the Middle East, Africa, and Asia. Hello, Rhona. How are you?
I'm very well indeed, thank you. How are you?
Excellent. And
Welcome.
Thank you very much for taking the time out of your busy schedule. I know you are in high demand and you had a presentation that was incredible. So let's start with this. Just to set the scene, what is the current state of play in terms of overall supply and demand?
Both platinum and palladium are generating small deficits.
Right.
That is going to change in the longer term, certainly as far as palladium is concerned, because of destruction of demand, but we can come on to that in more detail. At the moment, the numbers that we have suggesting that on a global basis, platinum demand is outstripping supply by the equivalent of roughly or between 2 and 3 weeks global industrial demand overall. And the picture's similar for palladium.
So do you subscribe to the long-term bearish sentiment surrounding the PGM, palladium in particular?
It's almost impossible not to.
Right.
The president, of course, has got his own ideas, and that is going to change things a little bit in the States. But essentially what we've got is the transition to net zero, green energy, etc. Now, there are 200 and odd countries that in theory should be affected by this, but at the moment only 107, I think it is, have actually specified by what date they expect to be at net zero. So there's a bunch that are already in policy. There's a smaller element that's actually already in law. Then there's a huge raft who are targeting by 2050. Germany and Sweden are 2045, but most of us are 2050. And most of us analysts still think that's an unwieldy aspiration. The interesting ones are that China is looking at 2060, and India, would you believe, is as far out as 2070.
Oh, I believe that.
2070, wow, yeah, that's a long ways away. Hey guys, have you ever asked yourselves, am I really reaching the top of the market on my catalytic converter recycling? Are you guys decanning and getting paid via an assay? And if you're not decanning, why not? Are you still throwing your oxygen sensors in your scrap bin and getting paid pennies on the dollar? What about your spark plugs? A lot of you watching this touch handle spark plugs on the daily. Stop throwing those in the trash. They have recycling value also. I want to encourage you to take our 3-day workshop. Businesses have learned to go from selling catalytic converters in the can to decanning and actually reaching the top of the market by getting paid via an assay. Businesses have also learned how to recycle spark plugs, and they're doing it on a massive scale. Click the link below, take advantage of this opportunity, start making more profits for your business today.
Okay, so recently here in the United States, we've learned that both the House and the Senate have rescinded California's 3 EPA waivers.
Yeah.
And it hasn't been signed by the president yet. We all expect him to do that because that's part of his agenda. How do you see that affecting the United States?
Well, that's just part of the greater picture, but it's obviously the mere fact that you've raised it points to it being an important element because it shows that the momentum, if not building, is at least steady. So what's happening here is that the internal combustion engine for light vehicles is responsible for roughly 40% of platinum demand. Again, that's a global number.
Right.
It's responsible for over 80% of palladium demand and over 85% of
believe that.
rhodium.
Right.
And that's just in gross terms. That's not thinking about recycling. But then the recycling does come in, and it plays a very important part, because let's assume, for the sake of argument, that these targets are met. They won't be. We've got to start somewhere. While the internal combustion engine sales are going to fall, at the same time, you've still got vehicles coming back for scrappage purposes. It used to be that the life of a light vehicle would be between 11 and 13 years. A degree of austerity and certainly lack of consumer confidence at the moment means that that's gone out a bit to 12 to 14. So when it comes to doing a long-term supply-demand balance, what you have to do is to go back 12 or 13 years to what the demand was then. Then obviously there's losses and so on and so forth. But when you put all that together against falling demand on the primary side and increasing secondary supply, there could, in theory, come a point towards 2040 when the auto sector, which is responsible for such a large element of demand at the moment, becomes a net supplier. So, and this is particularly palladium.
That's an interesting concept.
Yes. I very much doubt it'll happen. And people are awake to it. They're alive to it. There's a lot of technological research going on. Certainly some of the miners are working in conjunction with refiners and so forth, as you would expect. In Russia, where Norilsk nickel is the world's largest palladium producer. Right. And of course, that comes out as a byproduct of nickel. So it's a function of the nickel business model, not the PGMs.
Ditto, it's a byproduct.
Exactly. Ditto with the platinum business model in South Africa, where palladium's a byproduct there. Although 3 years ago, you could have said that it was the primary product because it was the major revenue earner, but that's a different story.
Yeah, that's just dollars.
Yeah, exactly. Or rand.
Or rand,
But Norilsk, we know, is common knowledge, is doing an awful lot of technological research because obviously they're losing byproduct credit prices, as indeed are the South Africans, which is one of the reasons why the South African supply side at the moment is a little bit stretched.
Are you hearing of any new uses for palladium that are being developed that might be able to take up some of this excess inventory?
Well, some people here are saying that there are uses for palladium in conjunction with platinum. The most obvious one of which that I know about is fuel cell technology, which at the moment is platinum as the anode and the cathode, the electrodes. And if you're going to produce green hydrogen from the hydrolysis to get the feedstock of the hydrogen, platinum's involved in that as well, as is iridium and or ruthenium. So that's interesting for the minor platinum group metals.
That's right.
But certainly at pilot level, work has been done whereby you use a platinum-palladium alloy for the electrodes in the fuel cells. And that apparently, certainly at pilot level at any rate, appears to be delivering a superior energy density to the fuel cells that have just got platinum anodes. Electrode. Interesting. Yeah, it's a relatively small concept or a relatively small tonnage, but where it would be very useful and is already in place in some cases, is off-road vehicles like tractors and so forth.
Sure.
And some heavy-duty vehicles, and some of the mining companies are already using fuel cell vehicles on site, as indeed they should be, because they should be blazing the trail.
Right. Well, speaking of platinum, what do you make of the reports of recent strong Chinese platinum demand?
China is famous, as should everybody else be, to be perfectly honest, for buying things when they're out of favor. And then they've got it when they come back into favor.
Right.
That's right.
And they've been active in the platinum market for a long time. But what hit the headlines recently was the fact that their recorded imports into mainland China hit 10 tons of platinum in April. Now, that's actually not a record by any stretch of the imagination, but it was quite a sizable jump from January and February. And when you look at what the price was doing, that's understandable. So they've been taking metal in.
Is that ingot, coin, jewelry?
No, it would generally be ingot or sponge.
Sponge?
Yeah, for industrial use.
Industrial.
There are reports that one of the major drivers is the jewelers stocking up. That's on a bit of a wing and a prayer, if you ask me, because the majority of people are either yellow or white when it comes to the color of the jewelry they want to wear.
Right.
And particularly so in China. In the Western Hemisphere, it's maybe not quite as pronounced. But in China, gold doesn't have the religious significance that it has in India, but it has the significance of happiness.
Right.
And gold demand, I know we're straying off the PGMs for a second, but it's relevant. Gold demand in China, as far as private individuals are concerned, jewelry has taken a thumping because of the high price. Coin and bar investment is very strong, so the actual tonnage that's going in there is broadly steady. But where the jewelers are, I think, taking a bit of a risk is that while in the States there certainly has been some switching from yellow to white because of the respective covers, and I'm ashamed to say because I'm a gold girl, but this actually is platinum. It's my mother's engagement ring set it's platinum.
That's very nice.
It's just about the only white piece that I've got. Anyway, I digress. The tales from onshore China is that the jewelers are stocking up with platinum because obviously it's so much cheaper now than gold.
Right.
It's harder to work.
It sure
It's more
is.
difficult. But there is no sign as yet that Chinese individuals who would normally be buying gold jewelry are prepared to make the shift. So we don't know whether that metal is going to come back into the market. Almost certainly not, because generally speaking, once China has bought something, it doesn't sell it again. So that has caused some tightness in the London market. I would imagine there's probably some pressure on the Swiss refiners. I don't know, but I'd imagine there probably is. And what we've seen comparatively recently is that the London market has got tight, and because of the potential risk of tariff implementations, which actually none of us really think is going to happen, because as we were talking before, that's virtual industrial suicide. Because PGMs are so important. Even so, risk managers are not prepared to allow their dealers, and the dealers don't really want to do it either, to offset their long London positions, such as they are, with the exchange for physical into New York. Because if you're going to deliver against that contract, you've got to have the metal there.
That's a great point. So we've just had London Platinum Week, another key gathering of PGM market stakeholders around the globe. Was the sentiment there any different from the sentiment here? And if so, how?
I would say that this one is probably slightly more constructive. There's probably, how best can I phrase it? There was a mild air of depression in London. This one, I think, is it's more constructive. I think there's maybe a little bit more lateral thinking going on. The one thing which did strike me was that the majority of people who said that there was good upside for platinum were the people in the marketing organisations.
Of course.
Who shall remain nameless.
Well, we're all looking at the price of platinum this morning and we're saying to ourselves, imminent breakout or is it topping? It's
I
hard to
would have
say.
thought this is probably short covering.
Short
covering.
covering rally.
Yeah.
Just kind of feels a little bit different. Off topic, gold feel the same way?
I think the top's in.
You do?
Yeah. The intraday high on the 21st of January 1980, after we'd had the Hunt brothers trying and failing to corner the silver market, but we won't talk about COMEX breaking the rules.
We don't discuss that.
The Iranian hostage crisis, Afghanistan, and of course the second oil crisis, they all came together.
They did.
Sounds
Perfect
rather,
storm.
Yeah, feels rather like it does nowadays.
Kind of does.
Yeah. If you take that number, you won't actually find it in any of the LBMA numbers because the monthly close was something like 650, but it did hit 850. Blink and you missed it, but it was there. And if you turn that into $2025, March $25, that equated to $3,486 per ounce. And when that got taken out, that was the day also that we hit the high of 3,510 cents, 22nd of April. Yeah. So maybe I'm being romantic, maybe I'm being a silly little girl about this, but when I saw that taken out, I thought, right, that's the top.
That's the top, huh?
Morgan and Goldman are calling 4.5.
Yeah.
And again here I'm letting my heart rule my head to a certain extent. I think that if we saw those prices, it would probably be for bad humanitarian reasons. Mm-hmm. It would be another level of risk. Well, one of the things that I've noticed over the past 3-4 weeks or so, which would tend to confirm the anecdotal evidence that we're in a crowded gold market now, because a lot of people were waiting either to come back into the market or to come in fresh towards the second half of last year. They were waiting for a $200-300 drop, never came because you've got the CTAs and the algos and everything else. So people have piled in. And what I've noticed recently is that whenever we get something like another tariff statement, or to a lesser extent the Fed, gold's reaction, there's always a knee-jerk reaction in just about anything.
Well, on
but
the retail
particularly in gold.
side, I'm hearing that the spreads are shrinking for product, coins, ingot.
Coin's dead at the moment.
Yeah.
But as far as the professional
supply isn't
market is
available.
concerned, anything on tariffs recently, gold's reaction has been decreasing, which suggests there's a degree of immunization going on, if you like.
We're at the top.
It looks like that.
It feels like that.
It feels like it, yeah.
Interesting. Very interesting. I was just curious. You look at the white metals, pretty much all of them, in your analysis. What is your feeling on iridium primary mine supply going forward here?
I
the
don't
next
know enough
couple of
about
years?
it.
You're not following that.
No, I don't have the time.
All right.
No, I wish I could help. But I suppose one can interpolate from the basis that Norilsk, their interest rate costs, their financing costs are north of 20%, because that's where the Russian benchmark interest rate is.
Wow.
And of course, palladium and rhodium and nickel price is okay, but the byproduct credits are down. And you add that to the increased domestic costs that they've got because they've had to change their supply chain mechanisms.
That's right.
That is meaning that one of their big capex programs is currently on hold, as I understand it. So what would have been an expansion over the next 2-3 years doesn't look as if it's going to come about yet. And in South Africa, let's pray we finish with load shedding. I can't believe that we have, but let's pray.
We're still
that we
talking
have.
about that?
Yes, there's been some talk about it recently.
Interesting.
Yeah, the head of Eskom is warning that things aren't quite as rosy as people are saying.
Gosh.
Yeah, I know. Bang goes my holiday next February. Some of the South African producers, they're also a little bit on hold because they've got the reduced balance sheet. And I understand that some of the work in the inventory that was being worked off because of the load shedding of 23, 24, that's sort of coming to an end. And there aren't any cuts in the pipeline, but it's like, maybe not the elephant in the room, maybe it's a mouse, but it's there.
Okay.
But it's there.
Yeah. So those byproducts, the minor PGMs, they would be hit as well.
Yeah, of course they would. Of course
Yeah.
they would. Wow, that was great. Very
Really
insightful. I really appreciate you joining us today.
It's a great pleasure. I enjoyed it.
Thank you very much.